The film starts with a lady named Edie. After talking to her sister, she chooses to see a therapist. Edie seems sad and struggles to connect with others. She wishes to keep her struggles to herself and doesn't want anyone's help. Wanting a break from it all, she decides to go away from the city. She finds a quiet cabin to rent. Her sister, Emma, tried to keep in touch, but Edie threw her phone away. After a long drive, she was greeted by the beautiful wilderness. She took a turn off the main road, going deeper into the forest. Eventually, she met the cabin's owner, Colt. He pointed out that the area around was both a hunting zone and a nature reserve. Edie had a request for Colt. She wanted him to move her car away. Colt was unsure about this, but Edie said she'd be fine. Now, all by herself, Edie explored both the cabin and a nearby shed that had a gun. With no power in the cabin, she relied on a flashlight when it got dark. The night was restless for her as unfamiliar nature sounds kept her awake. Come morning, she started cleaning the cabin. She had brought canned food for her stay. She also tried cutting wood for a fire, but it was challenging and hurt her hands. Memories flooded back, of her sister pleading with her to stay together. Overwhelmed with emotions, Edie wondered about her purpose in life. As she remembered these moments, she could see her sister consoling her. The following day, Edie went to fetch water. The river's current was too fast, and she dropped her container. Without thinking, she jumped into the river to retrieve it. As he had said, Colt arranged for someone to move Edie's car for her. Edie thought of going fishing. Memories of her son and husband doing the same filled her mind. Later, she took a walk in the forest, getting lost in her past. Back at the cabin, Edie wanted to light the stove. It felt like the sun's warmth was embracing her. That night, a storm rolled in. Rain poured down, and the cabin roof started to leak. Throughout the day, the rain persisted. She imagined seeing her late husband nearby. As she settled into bed, his presence still felt close, making her cry. The following morning, Edie began cleaning and stumbled upon a box she couldn't bring herself to open. When night came, she heard the sounds of wild animals outside. The temperature dropped and snow began to fall. When she stepped out for a moment, she heard a growl. Peeking through the cracks in the cabin, she spotted a large bear. Scared, she hid. After a while, she emerged to find the cabin in disarray and her food almost all gone due to the bear's raid. With limited food and the cold setting in, Edie built an outdoor fire. She then set a trap, hoping to snare a small critter for food. Even with the cold, she tried her hand at fishing. Chopping wood got a bit easier, but the stove hardly warmed her. And soon, she ran out of her canned food supply. With no other option, Edie took her gun and went hunting. She spotted 2 moose but had no success. Despondently, she returned to the cabin, realizing she was all alone and without food. The thought of giving up crossed her mind, but thinking of her sister, Emma, provided strength. Emma was the anchor that prevented Edie from making any impulsive decisions. Although Edie found some sustenance, it wasn't sufficient. The cold intensified. As she lay on the ground, her mind drifted back to happier times with her family. Suddenly, she was awakened by the howling wind. A severe snowstorm was raging, yet Edie ventured outside. Returning to the cabin, Edie was so drained that she collapsed on the chilly ground. Out of the blue, she heard a knock. Expecting her late husband, she was met instead by an unfamiliar face. Soon, a man and a woman rushed in, reviving Edie and warming her up. While the woman looked after her, the man sealed the windows. They decided to stay over, ensuring the stove kept burning. As Edie recovered, she learned their names were Miguel and Alava. Interestingly, Alava was a trained nurse. They urged Edie to seek medical attention, but she declined. Alava had to leave, but Miguel committed to staying and assisting Edie. He chose to sleep in his car, and the next day, he prepared breakfast, even helping the weak Edie to eat. By afternoon, a tired Edie took another nap. Once she felt better, she wanted to know more about Miguel. She learned he had been hunting nearby and was alerted by the smoke from her chimney. When the smoke disappeared, he grew concerned. Later on, Miguel headed to town for supplies. By the time he returned, Edie's health had improved. That afternoon, he got busy chopping wood. The weather began to soften, allowing Edie to freshen up. In the evening, Alava came around. She still pressed for Edie to see a doctor, but upon Edie's refusal, Alava performed some basic checks right there. Alava expressed concern about Edie's solitude, especially without any means of communication. Edie responded, saying it was a deliberate choice. Shortly after, Miguel returned with the test results. Everything indicated Edie was in good health. She invited him for a coffee and expressed her gratitude. Finally, Edie revealed that she had chosen this isolation because she wanted distance from other people. Edie tried offering Miguel money, but he didn't take it. Instead, he suggested teaching her how to hunt, which Edie happily agreed to. She also made him promise not to share news from outside. They started hunting lessons. While Edie struggled initially, she remained persistent. Besides hunting, they both went fishing. Together, they fixed the cabin's roof. On another hunting trip, Edie managed to catch some prey. With Miguel's guidance, she learned to handle the catch. Edie now set her own traps and hunted by herself. Nights were restful for her, and days were spent reading books, deepening her understanding of the wild. One day, Edie began preparing soil to start a garden. Miguel came by, this time with his dog, Potter. She shared that during his week-long absence, she hadn't spoken a word. While collecting berries, Miguel spoke of his work in water conservation for those without access. When the topic of family came up, Miguel revealed the tragic loss of his wife and daughter in a car crash 8 years prior. Edie shared about her own family. As the day turned to evening, they grilled meat over a flame. Miguel inquired about Edie's hopes for the future. All she desired was a deeper connection with nature. At some point, Edie sensed Miguel had tried to learn about her online. She wasn't pleased, so she withdrew to her cabin. That evening, she sat alone by the fire. Miguel soon approached, suggesting another hunting trip. Edie apologized for her earlier withdrawal. They spent the day in the woods, ending it by singing a nostalgic tune around the campfire. One day, Miguel showed Edie a sketch his niece had done, jokingly saying she believed her uncle had invented a story about a hermit friend in the hills. Edie wanted to show the girl she was real, so she thought of giving her something special. After a while, she finally opened the long-kept box. Taking out a piece of paper, she handed it to Miguel. He mentioned needing to leave for some time and asked Edie to care for Potter. Alone, she looked into the box once more, finding photographs of her joyous family. Miguel paused his drive to look at the paper she'd given him, revealing a kid's sketch. Edie, gazing at her family's photos, shed tears, yearning for her son and husband. She always held dear memories of Emma, who had constantly been there for her. Feeling strong, Edie displayed the photos and drawings on her cabin wall. That night, she bathed outside, surrounded by silence. Days went by with just Potter for company, and Edie cherished this solitude. She felt lonelier among people than in this isolated setting. Yet, she deeply missed Miguel. Time went on without his return, making her anxious. Taking necessary items, she journeyed, following the river and woods with Potter by her side. She eventually reached a town. It all felt unfamiliar. Pushing through her discomfort, she entered a cafe and inquired about a hospital, hoping to find Alava, a nurse she last met 2 years ago. Recognizing her, Alava led Edie to Miguel's place. His late wife's sibling opened the door, revealing Miguel's grave illness. Miguel was overjoyed to see Edie, who had brought hope into his life. With emotions running high, he requested Edie to fetch his phone with all his cherished songs. He admitted his role in a tragic accident due to his drinking. Edie shared her own painful memory of her husband, Adam, and son, Drew, who were victims in a concert shooting. After expressing gratitude to him and Alava, a heartbroken Edie retreated, spending her night on a swing. For the first time in ages, she used a phone to call her sister Emma, who was overjoyed to hear Edie's voice.